Ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots and freedom-loving Americans, welcome back to another episode of The Source, Rulebreakers, Lawmakers, and Influencers. This is The Source, where rules get broken for the greater good, laws get made to serve the people, and influence drives us forward. Today's episode, we'll be speaking with Hillary Cassel, Florida House of Representatives, District 101. Welcome, Hillary.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's great to be here. Appreciate the time. Last December, you made some waves and you switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. What led up to that decision?
You know, I wish I could say it was one little thing. I mean, there's definitely a big aha moment that I have. The first thing that I also like to tell people is I was raised in a Republican household. My family, my dad's one of 8 kids. I was raised around all my cousins. Everybody's a Republican. My mom was even a Republican elected official. So I was a registered Republican longer than I ever was a Democrat. But I made the switch. Really, a lot of things took place. But the primary thing that really opened my eyes to really take a look around at the party and see, is this really where I want to be aligned, is after October 7th. I'm a woman of Jewish faith. I'm raising a Jewish son in troubling times to be, for Jewish people. And after October 7th, I would say less than 30 days after the war started, now Congressman Randy Fine filed a resolution on the floor of the House supporting Israel, and a Democratic colleague of mine filed a resolution that was pro-Palestine. And I debated her. I stood up for my community. I stood up for my district, which has an extremely large Jewish population. And most importantly, I stood up for myself and my family and debated her against her resolution. And after that moment, there was a lot of backlash that I received within the caucus. I was told that I should have sat down and stayed quiet, that how dare I create dem-on-dem violence. As I'm sitting here going, I'm not the one that filed it. But it really was this moment where I said, how are we even allowing a member of the party to file this? This should have never been filed. This should have never been heard. Leadership should have stopped this. And we should have all come together to fight. I mean, this is a good and evil situation. And they weren't able to. And that really just sort of opened my eyes and said, you need to take a look around at the people you're with, the values that are being put forward. And it just called me to question and challenge where I was at in that time in my life. And it took a little longer. I wish I could say it was immediately after that moment that I made the switch, but things continued to happen that showed me that that's not where I belonged. Yeah.
And it was more that the party made you feel increasingly like an outsider because of you following your moral compass or what you believe your values are in terms of governing?
Yeah, there were several situations that occurred after that, various topics where it was, made very clear to me that you're not aligning with us, and either you align with us or you're on an island. And quite frankly, I also put myself on an island because I didn't feel as though I was connected to the things that they were discussing or the values that they were putting forward. So I was also very welcomed by my Republican colleagues. I was always very friendly and hung out with my Republican colleagues probably more than my Democrat colleagues. And I think that's because of where I come from. It was always a natural place for me to be. So it just, after the election, seeing the response of the Democratic Party, there was no self-awareness. There was no self-reflection of how did they get there. The conversations that were taking place with leadership were to really blame the American people, that we couldn't elect her because America's full of racists and misogynists. And
we're too stupid to govern ourselves.
We're too stupid to govern ourselves. And when you do that and you say those kinds of things, you're talking about my family. You're talking about my dad, my mom, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my brother. And I take offense to that because I know that the people that I love and care about aren't those people. So it just really gave me an opportunity to take a look around. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be aligned. And could have gone independent, but that's not where my values are either. I'm really happy to be back home in the Republican Party.
Yeah, from a party switch standpoint, as an elected official, independent feels like you're not taking a stand either way, right? So I do appreciate that you went from Democrat to Republican. It seems when I think about the Democrat Party, they're no longer the party that I grew up with. The party of the working man, the party that represented people that needed a hand up, or a leg up. And so when you look at the Democrat Party now, it seems like they're more focused on the petty issues and the petty arguments and the needs of the few outweighing the needs of the many. So when you look at how much the party's changed, what are the traditional Democrat values that the party really no longer resonates, that you're aligned with, that have really become more of what the Republican Party stands for today?
Yeah, so it's interesting, again, having come from a Republican family, I didn't really know that many Democrats, but the Democrats got me sort of hook, line, and sinker on that empathy morality card, right? If you're not with us, you must be insert horrible adjective. And so I never really knew why I became a Democrat other than they got me on that card and sold me on we're the big tent. And, what people don't realize is, I went into the belly of the beast, so to speak. I didn't become a Democrat and then sit on the sidelines. I went straight in and I entered that tent and realized, well, that tent is just made up of a lot of small rooms with labels. And what label do you have? What's your identity? How do you identify? How can we divide you even further? And there wasn't really space for me. I didn't fit certain categories that they choose to highlight because I'm not that super minority representation. And I think really what I thought I was entering into was exactly that. I want to help people. That's why I ran for public service. I want to help the people that need additional support. But I think government should remain small. But I think those values are no longer representative of the Democratic Party. They are divisive. It is simply fighting for, the smallest minority available instead of recognizing what that greater good is and how do we, support America. I also think one of the biggest things for me being in the party is there really isn't pride in being American. And for me, that has been the greatest gift coming back to the Republican Party of feeling so proud to be an American. We have our issues in this country. We are still the greatest country in the world. And it is so incredibly amazing to just be able to feel proud to be an American again and to fight for American values. And I don't feel that the Democratic Party does that. I think if you're a Democrat, right now, the way the party is operating is you're not happy to be here. You want to highlight all the things that are wrong or what you think happened, not what you think, but you want to focus on what happened hundreds of years ago and still say that that's, what resonates today instead of saying, where are we today as a country? Let's be proud of where we are and work towards making those changes. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what the party mantra has been over the past several years is, how can we further divide people? And in a way, if they can keep us squabbling over all of these little things, then they get to push through the big things and nobody really gets to notice them or care about them. And, a perfect example is in Washington and what you're seeing with policies being jammed into 1,000-page bills, being dropped 72 hours before a vote and being expected to read and assimilate all of that in that short period of time. And then distracting people with labels, right? To your point, insert the adjective. And then that further takes you away from what's really going on and what do you care about. And at the end of the day, I think what people care about is making a good living, paying lower taxes, having more money in their pocket, right? Being in a community that cares about them. And if you're somebody who falls down, that there is some sort of program there to help you get back up, but not from a Republican perspective, not a program that gives you learned helplessness and keeps you trapped there forever, right?
100%. And I think something that I saw in the Democratic Party that there's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of victim mentality, and I think that's why we see a lot of the anger and frustration that we see coming out of sort of that radical left. Because if you're told the system's keeping you down and the system is meant to keep you down and you're never going to have an opportunity to get out of the system and the people that are holding you down are on the other side, then you add to it the Democratic messaging, which is very, the Republicans are trying to erase history. They're trying to erase your identity. You don't matter. There's no value. And that's the messaging that the Democrats send to their base supporters. So if you are told that basically the situation you are in is out of your control and you're hopeless, you're going to resort to, sadly, lighting Teslas on fire and what we saw with Charlie Kirk's assassination. You think that is going to be the only answer instead of what the Republicans preach, which is, hey, you have all the opportunity in this country and the world, and we'll help you to the extent that you're willing to help yourself. Those services are available, but this is the greatest country in the world. Those opportunities are available if you want to go out and get them.
Yeah, 100%. You know, there are so many ways to lend your voice, right? And lend action, right? Go volunteer for a candidate, go volunteer in your local community, get involved in something rather than just posting dissatisfaction on social media, right? Because it's just a big echo chamber and you're not really saying it to anybody who cares what you have to say. You may feel good in the moment that you said it, but there's much more good things that can come from taking action and not just, posting in the echo chamber.
Yeah, and I think, obviously society, we're in this weird place, right, where social media just seems to control everything, but, we're missing that human connection. And again, if you are fed messaging that says you're alone and the system's keeping you down and you're on an island, what are you supposed to do with that? And I really think when I look at the Democratic Party and how they are going to get themselves out of the mess, it's got to start with their own messaging and what they're telling their own people. Yeah. And it's also why people are leaving them, because I think people are tired of being told they can't help themselves or that they don't have any control over their future.
The only answer is government.
Yes.
Right? The only answer is more government. More government. We need 87,000 IRS agents because that's the answer, right? Because the rich people are going to pay. Well, the reality is the rich people pay already, right? Correct. They want to go after the poor people who they can scare and send you a letter and you say, oh my God, here's my money, right? Because I can't afford an accountant or a lawyer to go defend me. So whole nother topic.
Whole nother topic. I'll have to come back for that one.
Another day. But, it's really interesting. You're a Jewish American woman, and when you look at the majority of Jewish Democrat voters, they're voting along the lines of social issues. But it feels like after the events of October 7th, that it's a little bit more primitive in the sense that, am I going to vote my faith? Am I going to vote for, the state of Israel? Or am I going to focus on kids being able to have blue hair and nose rings as a sense of self-expression? Like what's more important to a Jewish voter in America? Is it those little one-off liberties, to your point, the rooms inside the tent of the Democratic Party? Or is it really standing with your traditional Jewish American values? I think previous to October 7th, it was fighting for that empathy card, that social card, the,
Jews, being obviously the minority of the minority and having been, persecuted as long as we have a lot of empathy for others in similar situations. The Jewish community is the first to be out there during the civil rights movement. We were there to stand alongside that movement. But I think we now realize after October 7th that we've really got to support our own and we've really got to choose ourselves. And quite frankly, when you see the Democratic Party's continued move towards the far left and what that looks like, it is anti-Jewish. Yeah. It is to support our attackers. It is to support an ideology that at the end of the day isn't just going and looking to impact Jews. It is to attack America. And I think you'll see a shift in the Jewish community. And I think we saw that obviously with President Trump's victory. Yeah. I think you saw a lot of the Jewish community saying, you know what, if you're not going to stand for me, I've got to stand for myself. And this is the party that I feel is going to fight for me and fight for Israel and fight to protect that. Because let's be very clear, the war that Israel is fighting is for all of us. It is for Western civilization. It is to ensure that we can continue to live the freedoms that we enjoy here in America, because Israel's just first on the list for the radical Islamists. And you've got to thank Israel that they're willing to take the heat that they've been receiving, because at the end of the day, it's for the greater good of humanity.
100%. If you can't condemn people going into another sovereign nation, kidnapping people, bringing them back and committing atrocities, if you can't call that out as wrong, then something is seriously misguided in your morality and what your sense of right and wrong is.
And that's how I felt, after my, individual situation. This isn't a conversation that, in my opinion, is up for debate. If you want to have conversations in the future, about whether, Netanyahu or the Israeli government, that's available. But there's a clear right and wrong here. And so soon after the war on October 7th, and to so vehemently come out in support of terror and attempt to reward that behavior by recognizing them. I'm so thankful to live in Florida. We have the greatest governor who has been so pro-Israel and pro-supportive of the Jewish community, and allowing and making sure that our voice is heard and that we are protected here through legislation and also through funding, and making sure that our communities are safe and our schools are safe. So, as a member of the Jewish community, I can't imagine living in any other state.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this isn't your first race, right? You're going up for re-election. So talk a little bit about what's happened in Tallahassee, some of the legislation that you've championed, and some of the additional work that you're looking forward to continuing. You do have another legislative session before we go into election season. So what's happened over this past session, and what are you looking forward to in next session? Yeah,
so I ran for office. The number one issue, that's facing Floridians is obviously affordability, and the number one cost driver that concerns people is property insurance, and that's my area of expertise. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for almost 20 years. 16 of those years I've specialized in specifically first-party property or homeowners insurance, and I'm known as an expert in that space. And I fight for everyday Floridians against big insurance corporations. And I took my fight, I like to say, I took my fight from the courtroom to the Capitol, because I represent everyday Floridians, and everyday Floridians can't leave their house or can't leave their work to go to Tallahassee to have conversation with legislators about their experience with their insurance company, or the fact that insurance right now is unaffordable, it's unavailable, and it's unreliable. So I engaged in the legislative process as a consumer advocate before ever running for office, and then said, this is really complicated. There's a reason why your average homeowner's insurance policy is anywhere between 80 and 110 pages long. They don't want to make it easy for a reason. Right. And that goes with having these really complicated and nuanced conversations with the legislature about reforms that were necessary to make sure there weren't abuses against insurance companies, but also to make sure that consumers had a voice, that in the event that they needed to hold their insurance companies accountable, they were able to. I'm a big believer that, Florida is extremely unique in the insurance space. We've got to make sure that we have the oversight and making sure that insurance companies, don't take advantage of the situation. We pay the highest premiums in the country, move that money to places that's not trackable, and then that big storm hits and they go, we get to claim bankruptcy. And we saw a lot
about that. That's not good.
It's not good. And we saw a lot of insurance companies go insolvent because we didn't have enough oversight. We didn't have enough checks and balances. So I really fight for that in the House. I serve as the vice chair of insurance and banking. So conversations about insurance are conversations I'm always having, but also, we know mental health, right? It's a huge part of the conversation that we're having, and making sure that our students are receiving the resources that they need. So since the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas tragedy, which happened in my county, we've spent over $800 million in providing mental health resources to our students, but we're actually not tracking that data. We have no idea if our students are getting healthier, or if that money is being mismanaged and not actually making it to the students and is really going to support the vendors that provide the resources. So I passed legislation this past year that is really going to start to track that data to make sure the money is going where it needs to go. Our kids are getting better. And if not, it's time to pivot and figure out how to make sure those two things are happening. I'm obviously, being a woman of Jewish faith, this past year, we've seen all the things that are occurring on college campuses across the state. And again, thankful to be in the greatest state in the country. We expanded our anti-BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions law here in Florida to make sure those things do not happen on our college campuses. And if they do, we have the ability to remove the funding. But also, we went to go protect our art and culture space. We know that sometimes art and culture is a place where anti-Semitic rhetoric can be utilized. So we said, if you're going to apply for a grant and get taxpayer dollars and get state money to put on a show or to put on an art gallery or to put on an art display, you can't utilize those funds to spread anti-Semitic hate. So I'm really proud of that legislation. And then I do stuff for my district. Not super sexy. You're not going to read the headlines, but City of Hollywood, one of my cities, has 48% of its homes on septic. We don't qualify for any state funding to make that transition. So City of Hollywood's left to kind of do it on our own. There was some case law from 1976 that was preventing the City of Hollywood from being able to do that, and we fixed it. So now City of Hollywood can utilize their funds, their resources, update their systems, and help our environment by getting 48% of the city off septic. So not super sexy, not going to get many headlines about it. But again, I'm there to serve my district and my community, and it's a bill that I'm really proud of.
And so which communities are in 101?
So I'm Broward County. I am pretty much coastal Broward County. So I always say I have the heart of Broward's economic infrastructure. So you need a cruise ship, you're going to the port, you're coming to my district. You're going out of Fort Lauderdale Airport, you're coming to my district. You're going to the Hard Rock Hotel, you're in my district.
Oh, wow.
You're going to the Gulfstream races, Margaritaville, Diplomat, all along the coast. You're going to the rodeo in Davie, that's my district. So I have the greatest district in Broward, but I think what people don't realize is you see a lot of politicians that are going to make this move when the numbers get redrawn or their district looks different. My district is 2-1 Democrat over Republican. I didn't make this move because I made my political journey that much easier. It's going to be really difficult for me to win re-election. It's not impossible. I'm definitely going to work really hard to come back and represent my district because I think I'm the best candidate regardless of political affiliation. But at the end of the day, this wasn't a switch that I made because my district is a Republican district, and I'm just trying to sort of further my political career. It's really kind of the opposite. But again, I needed to put my head on my pillow at night and wake up every morning and look in the mirror. And I have a 9-year-old son that looks up to me, and I want to make sure I'm leading him on the right path. And this was the only path.
So when you look at if you're going to give a message directly to the voters in District 101, what would you say to them is the reasons, the ideals, the values that you're championing for them, regardless of what letter they have after their name?
Yeah, I'm a champion for their needs. I'm a champion for the community. I focus on the environment because I'm a coastal community. That's really important for the tourism. Broward County is a donor county. My district in particular, because of the port and the airport, it is the economic engine for Broward County and partly the state. So making sure that Broward is a place that people still want to come to and what issues are important. At the end of the day, when I was a Democrat, I didn't just vote. I didn't just represent Democrats either. I also represented the independents and the Republicans, and that hasn't switched. As a lawyer, I'm super focused on the policy. What is the policy in front of me? It doesn't matter to me. Is it a Republican presenting that policy? Is it Democrat presenting that policy? What are the words on the paper? How is it going to impact my community? And do I think my community is going to support it or not? And that's how I vote. And that's how I voted as a Democrat. For example, little instances, we had legislation that was very polarizing in the Democratic caucus. We had a bill that that eventually passed and was signed by the governor that said, listen, you cannot buy property around our hospitals, our military bases, our airports, if it is believed that you have ties to communist China, Venezuela, Cuba. I mean, this was a no-brainer to me as a Democrat. That's putting my community, my district, my country first. And that was a huge fight in the Democratic caucus. And I'm sitting here looking around going, make this make sense to me.
Yeah.
We need to protect our places of national security where our food comes in, from overseas, our importing or exporting.
Yeah.
These are the places that we have to protect, our places of first defense. And you are worried about potential discrimination that might occur because we want to look into whether or not, when you want to buy property and this close to these huge things, whether or not you have ties to communism. Yes. I'm pressing that green button. Sorry. I'm pressing that green button all day. And to me, that is putting my district first, my community first, regardless of what the political letter says I should or shouldn't do. Yeah. And I've always been that way. And if you want someone that's going to go and fight and it's going to be me.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so many things are just common sense, right? I mean, I think, if you look at I've been a Republican all my life. It's funny, my father was in construction in New York, and he was like, we're a registered Democrat, but nobody knows how we vote when we get in the booth, which meant we voted Republican. And it was always, smaller government, right? Stay out of my way, meritocracy, strong defense, low taxes, giving businesses the tools that they need to provide the economic engine for the economy. And then the Democrats, on the other hand, were the working class, right? And we were working class 100%, right? Always aspiring to more. But we had this flip where we went from Democrat went from the party of the working class to the party of the elites, and that it's a luxury to be able to worry about purple hair and nose rings compared to putting food on the table, right? It's a luxury to worry about those things when you look at protecting our national borders. It's a luxury, to let a Chinese spy balloon go across our country without shooting it down, right, is a misalignment of priorities. And so I think what a lot of voters need to realize is that when they're looking at candidates, they need to look at candidates through the lens of, is this common sense? Is this what I would vote for if I was in that situation? Or would I prefer to focus on, this one person with this one issue while negating the needs of everybody else in the state?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to summarize it. And you and I have actually similar histories. I grew up in a construction home. My dad was a contractor. I like to say my first job was building houses. So I was either building a house or I was working on my grandfather's farm. So a lot of manual labor in my history, which also provides me a great opportunity to understand what it is like out there to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't come from anything. Everything I have is thankfully through the grace of God and the support of my parents. But getting through college, getting through law school, I came out of law school with $160,000 in debt and paid every single penny back because I believe that's what we should do. So, I was just raised really first and foremost with my mom being an elected official. You give back to your community, you give back to the people. At the end of the day, this country is for all of us, but at the same time, we've got to put America first, and closing our borders and making sure that Americans have the ability to live that American dream is really what we should all be focused on. And that involves sometimes some hard conversations and making some difficult decisions. And I don't think they're that difficult, but you see the president really just putting America first. And it's really just so beautiful to see.
It is. And, it's, one of the things that as you were speaking, came up for me was, our tax dollars, we want our tax dollars to go for good things and good programs. You want them to be that head start and those people, that leg up for people who have been disadvantaged. But when your tax dollars wind up going for people who did not contribute to the system, for people who are not here legally, for people who are not part of or don't even agree with us philosophically or ideology, like the first and foremost thing is I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, right? Like
First and foremost.
If we don't agree on that, then why are you here? And even more so, why are you taking $1 from me, right? At the same time, you kind of like, you got your hand behind your back with your fingers crossed, like, don't see who I really am, but yeah, I'll take your $1. And so yeah, I think when me as a voter, what I'm looking at people that are going to vote their conscience, that believe in America, that want to create programs to help people that have been disadvantaged, but not to just give money away because we feel bad, right? And you didn't do anything to deserve it, and we're going to give it to you anyway. And so, yeah, that's where my 2 cents on the source.
And we are so aligned in that, I think that's where we've gotten away from, right? And to be able to say, I love Doge, right? I love that we're doing it in Florida. I love that we're taking a hard look, because if we can cut back on the taxes that we're taking from everyday Floridians, that's money back in people's pockets, or everyday Americans from a national perspective. That's money that goes back in people's pockets, where we're not funding things that aren't in alignment with this country. So I'm super supportive of it. We're doing it here in Florida. We are taking a look at Broward County. I think Broward County is unique in the sense we are a donor county, and we've got the airport and the port that we're responsible. So we've got a very, very large budget. But I think it's always good to take a look and say, where can we do things better? And I think when you listen to the rhetoric around, this Doge concept, and the people that are in opposition to it, how are you in opposition to just taking a deeper look and having somebody say, hey, was this the right use? Or could we cut this? Or could we look at spending in a different way? So maybe we can alleviate property taxes because our cities and our municipalities and our counties don't need the level of funding that they have. Or can we change our property tax structure here in the state of Florida that allows, maybe isn't a full elimination, but allows people to get some money back and own their property from the government. So I'm super excited. I serve on that committee in Tallahassee, and I'm super excited for the path that we're on to solve that problem and figure out how to put money back in people's pockets and potentially, look into better solutions for that.
And what I think people don't understand when they think about Doge, and you brought up a great point when you talked about the counseling program, right? So state allocates the money. Okay, well, now all of these mechanisms have to be in place to make sure that the money actually gets to where it's supposed to go. So when people look at you want to claw back money, well, no, we just want to make sure that $780 million gets, or whatever the number was, gets to the people that it's intended to help, instead of getting eaten up along the way by bureaucracies and counties being able to say, well, that goes into our general fund, and because it's in our general fund, then we can reallocate that money to other school board projects that aren't necessarily that. And so people don't realize that Doge at its heart is really about making sure that all the dollars that are coming in are being allocated the most efficiently. And if they're not, then you either change the legislation that allows for those dollars, or you claw back those dollars because they're getting wasted on things that they shouldn't be spent on.
Yeah, we see that government spending is out of control, and that's not in recent history, right? That is historically. And we've got to take a better look at that if we want America to continue to survive and thrive. So I look at it as, I would love for someone to come take a look at my bank account and tell me where I could make some changes. I probably won't listen to all of them, but it's a great thing to have.
It's funny that you say that, because look at how many apps are out there that we as consumers sign up for that tell us, where is our money being spent? Oh, wait, you've been paying for 4 memberships every month that you don't utilize anymore, right? If you moved your money here, you could be getting 3% on your money that's just been sitting in your checking account doing nothing. I mean, we all subscribe to apps that doge our life.
Correct.
Where is the resistance of doging our government?
Yep. You're 100% right.
So thank you so much, Hillary. I really appreciate the time today. If you'd like to tell the voters how to get in touch with you and where they can follow you or get involved with your campaign.
Yeah, sure. It's Rep Hillary Cassel on all the various social media channels that you can think of: Instagram, X, Facebook. Reach out to me there. We're really responsive. You can also follow my campaign, Hillary for Florida. Again, I'm HillaryForFlorida.com.
Okay.
But it's one of those, I'm in a tough seat. So if you like what I had to say, please follow me. I'm going to need your help. Broward's a 2-to-1 Democrat versus Republican, and we got to keep this seat. We got to keep this seat R.
Sounds great. Awesome. Great to have you today.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Source. Rule breakers, lawmakers, and influencers. We'll see you next time.